So welcome everyone to this video podcast of PIMVendors.com. I'm Stephan and Dennis. I'm co-founder of PIMVendors.com. And today we will be talking with Dennis Van Bregt, one of the leading professionals in the product data space. We are doing a series of interviews and today we'll be discussing various topics. But if you have maybe someone in your network that might be an interesting person for me to interview, please let us know. In any case, you know me, but maybe you don't know Dennis, or maybe you do know Dennis. But maybe, Dennis, can you give us a short introduction about your background and what do you do?
Yeah. So first of all, Stephan, really thank you for inviting me. I'm always enthusiastic to do these type of things, so thank you very much. I'm Dennis Van Bregt. I'm currently working at Allnex, which is the largest coatings and resins producer in the world. So we create polymers which coat professional materials. So even though most people have not heard of Allnex, they're everywhere around you because everything that needs a coating to protect it against either the elements or against UV or needs a scratch resistant. That's what our polymers do. I'm there, the head of data, analytics and AI. So the data part is master data management, data pipelines, data platform, and also data governance by design. So really taking care of data privacy, data security, data quality, and data literacy, where the latter is also becoming more data and AI literacy to really get everyone up to speed on what data and AI actually means, but also what they have as influence on data and AI, because all of us generate data on a minute-by-minute basis. The analytics, what do you do with the data? So traditionally linked to SAP with business objects, business warehouse, but more and more transferring to Power BI based on the data platform. Last but not least, the AI part. So where can AI and machine learning already help making processes more effective and or efficient? Little bit of my background. I studied econometrics in Rotterdam. I'm born and raised in Rotterdam. So if we would have recorded this in Dutch, people would probably have recognized my accent. It's still there, even though I already live now about 10 years in the eastern part of the Netherlands, close to the German border near Arnhem. So studied econometrics, or nowadays that is probably called data science. Started my career in finance, did an SAP implementation. From that SAP implementation went more into logistics and supply chain. During that tenure, also did more SAP implementations at different type of companies, where also the main work that went into it was change management, but the other real main work that went into it was data and data migration. So I moved more and more to become really a data professional, then went more into ERP professional. Then I switched more to the digital side of things. So I became responsible for content management. So taking all the data that systems have and really turn them into engaging content in text, videos, images, hotspots, all the translations, etc. And that's where I also started exploring more and more into the PIM world. Then I got the opportunity to combine both. So I did master data management with content management. And with that, I got more and more the question. We know that the budget is how much you cost, but how much do you then actually deliver? So then came more and more into digital analytics to measure conversion, measure bounce rate, to measure attention, all those type of things. So that became more and more digital analytics. So at my previous company, I was also doing data governance and analytics. And now at this company, I do data analytics and AI. Every time I add something. And for me, it's like full circle, because now with being responsible again for AI, which I actually studied 30 years ago, so that gives away a little bit my age. Yeah, that gives it full circle. Live together with Miela, as said, in the eastern part of the Netherlands. My hobbies are Sci-Fi, and we are going to get a puppy in 3 weeks. So then we can really also explore a little bit more of the outdoors, because I've been stuck in my room with work too much. So we can really use some good motivation to also be more outside, because we really live on the countryside. So it really is beautiful.
Being stuck with science fiction can also lead to too much indoor time. I'll have you hand out some book recommendations at the end, maybe, Dennis.
Okay.
But I really wanted to, the stepping stones in your career and maybe dive a bit into that, because what you say, you've now come full circle, basically starting with kunstmatige intelligentie, artificial intelligence, and econometrics, went all the way around data, always interacting with data, if I can summarize it that way, back to, again, artificial intelligence. What I'm curious about is the different stepping stones and what you said, like how did you move from the where you what you studied, your topics there, and how you got interested in SAP, because that is, I'm not sure how, if people are interested in SAP, how that exactly works, and how you moved from basically always around data, moving to the next topic and then to the next.
The red line through my career is that most of my efforts always went into data, data, data. So that started when I started my career in finance as a management accountant. I looked at the story behind the number. So I did the monthly reporting, but you do want to see what are the drivers, why are things going up, why are things going down, why are things really difficult to change or to improve. And as a management accountant, I also had to do the corrections in the ERP system, which was as a 95% of the products follow the red line you have physically, but also administratively. So there are kind of a no-touch type of operations. 5% tend to deviate, becoming reworked, becoming lost, all of a sudden be more than what you anticipated, etc. And as a management accountant, I always had to correct them. So you really had to open the hood of the system and really go in and make the correction. A lot of those corrections were either needed because the process did not follow the red line, but some of them also always related back to wrong master data, wrong delivery times, wrong units of measures, wrong conversions, etc., etc. So I got already more and more acquainted both with the ERP system, SAP, as also with the data component. So when it became time to do an upgrade, at that time I worked at Unilever, and within the home and personal care division, they decided to move to one central version of SAP instead of having all the fragmented ones. So we did a re-implementation of SAP, and they asked me, with my background as management accountant, if I want to be the project lead for that. With that, I started shaping two things within my career. One is change management, so really the storytelling and the burning platforms. So storytelling is you paint a bright future and you pave the way how to get there. Burning platform is you paint a dark future and you paint the way not to get there. So it's either the carrot or the stick. So that I already picked up around that time. Also in my student years, I was already a tutor, so I already used all kinds of storytelling and analogies to really get more of the conceptual things into more practical things, explaining things like science, chemistry, mathematics, statistics. It is very tough for people to understand because it really is concept and not that easy to ground. But if you make it into more of a storytelling, then people go, oh, but this is how I see it in real life, and this is how I can relate to it, and this is how it then connects. The other part was then really becoming really a data professional, because of course with any ERP migration or any system migration, data migration is of course always a big chunk, always a challenge, because you think that the data you sit on is already qualitative, actual, etc. But when you need to do a migration and you go to a system which is more strict, all of a sudden you find out that with more mandatory fields, you didn't have all the data. Or if fields become self-checked, like that Dutch postal code is always 4 numbers and 2 letters, then all of a sudden you find out you have postal codes with only 4 numbers. So where did the letters go? So during data migration, you always stumble upon all those type of things. So some people think, yeah, but you do an extract and a transform and a load and you're done. The extract is relatively straightforward. The transform is really where you have a lot of things you need to do to apply that is ready for the other system. And then the load is usually straightforward as well. But really the transform and the transform logic, that's always a lot of work.
Maybe then,
Yep.
if I mean, this is very recognizable, and I'm afraid that that was an issue 25 years ago. It is still an issue today. Like this is a day-to-day issue. I'd be curious how you explain that story to people. Like, how do you explain that in the ETL, the extract, transform, load process, that transform is actually the biggest issue and costs the most time and has the most complexity? Like, how do you tell people that? How you get them on board that this is actually, many people underestimate the complexity, right?
There I usually use the technique of burning platform. So you paint a dark future where you have the same customer multiple times. You need to enter an order. Which customer do you select? You arrange your own transport, but the address is still a postal address and not a delivery address. So do you want to end up with a truck in a city center at a postal office to see if you can deliver a full truckload or less than full truck? So then really using the burning platform and therefore do data analytics in advance. So already do some pre-quality checks. And yes, it was an issue 25 years ago. And yes, it's an issue today. The big advantage of today is today we have much more tools at our disposal really helping us with that. Especially if you have B2B, then all companies do have a registry in their country, so you can validate their address. You can validate their VAT registration. You can have techniques to validate their bank account number, all those types of things. So it became easier, but it's still the same amount of work because we now have much more data at our disposal. Because we started using more metadata, we're going to generate more data because now on a minute by minute basis, we generate, I think, already more than 50 times the amount of data we did 25 years ago. And that is only going to grow because with AI around us, machine learning around us, all kinds of modern systems, we are now online almost 24/7. We all generate so much data that even though we have now more tools at our disposal, it's still an enormous amount of effort that people need to put in. And then usually storytelling gets you only that far by showing why you use metadata, and therefore you can optimize your processes or you can get better insight in your customers or in your suppliers or in your production process. But burning platform is still, for me, usually the thing that resonates best. I even had it when I worked at Miele. So I thought, okay, let's use a real practical example. Miele is from the household goods, from the kitchens, the washing machines. They also sell vacuum cleaners. So I got the request from, okay, Dennis, we know that we have some data quality issues. What bag of money do you need? Clean it once and for all.
I mean,
I said, clean it.
some data quality issues is already a red flag.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
And how did that become? That there was an anecdote that a customer showed up at a Miele Experience store with 3 coupons. One because that person was an office manager where they worked, so they got a Miele coupon. One because he registered his device in IoT with another email address, got a coupon for that. And because he was a Miele customer as a private person, he also got a coupon for that. Those 3 coupons were not mutually exclusive. So he just did coupon on coupon on coupon. So yeah, somebody walked away with a washing machine with, I think, 75% discount in total. But that reached the board that they go, hey, so we have a challenge in our customer master data that we can't uniquely identify them and that we can have duplicates in there. And with that, we can do all those types of things. Of course, the legal department immediately looked at to make coupons exclusive, so that you can't do coupon on coupon. That was the quick fix. But they also said, okay, so we really have a challenge in our data and in our data space and in our customer data platform. So what can we do about it? So what money do you need to clean it once and for all? And I said, I don't think that you require a once-off investment to clean it once and for all. I said, let's take an example. I take that money and I buy the best vacuum cleaner that Miele has to offer. And I clean my whole house in one weekend. Then I can sell the vacuum cleaner again because, yeah, it's clean. And then they go, no, you need to vacuum clean again next week. And I go, but why? Yeah, you use your house, you open doors, you open windows, dust will come in, dust will settle again. So you need to keep on cleaning it on a regular basis. I said, data is the exact same thing. We're using data, we're generating data, we're changing data. So why give a once-off bag of money to clean it once and for all? Then a week later, it's again going to be polluted. So you do need to put the right guardrails in place to keep it clean. So really look at the entry, but also look at continuous cycles to keep your data clean as it is. Because that one customer you said that had 3 registrations, they are 3 different registrations for 3 different purposes. That you eventually end up with the same person. And then also consent management, etc., is going to be another topic you need to address.
Yep.
Yeah, that will occur again. So yeah, and that is where you use storytelling or where you use burning platforms to really get the message across. And you really need to make sure that you have people who understand the fundamentals of data to really help you by setting it up to clean it, because you do need to do an initial cleaning, because you need to get into a base state of your house first with really rigorously cleaning, so that after that you can maintain it by just doing vacuum cleaning and a little bit of mopping every week or a couple times a week, depending on the usage of your house. And that is also what works in data management. And then the fun part is then they go, yeah, but we now have AI that can do everything for you. If you feed AI already with bad data, what does it then learn? Yeah, but it can pick up patterns and it can already help you by identifying duplicates. I said, yes, that it will help for sure. And that's what I also said. In 2025, we have a lot of tools at our disposal, but you still need the human in the loop, because it is quite some difficult things to figure out. And it doesn't always follow patterns, because we are working with real life data on a day-to-day basis.
Before we get to the AI, Dennis, I really love the analogy. I mean, of course, it was tailored to Miele, but the analogy of the house and the vacuum cleaner, because if you tell it like that, it's obvious. Yes, you need to have a tool to clean the house, and you need to clean the house before you implement new processes and train people to maybe take off their shoes when they come in, or not throw all their food on the ground during dinner, or like you have to train the people first. And then there's processes like, for example, I don't know, cleaning up, doing vacuum each week on Tuesday. And then you need a good vacuum cleaner, a good tool as well. But you can buy the best Miele or Dyson or whatever vacuum cleaner if you don't have that process in place, either preventing dust or having that regular checkup or having someone check if you're walking into the door with dirty boots, then it is no use. Or you end up with lots of crappy data, or sorry, a lot of a very dirty house anyway. That does make it more tangible for people because yes, obviously you do all those things if you want to keep your house clean, but it's the same for data and it's the same for many other topics as well. But it's very difficult to grasp. I think that is sort of the challenge for any IT professional, but maybe especially data professionals, where this is so abstract, it's difficult to grasp. And then from a customer perspective, that person that is an office manager, but also a private individual and also an existing Miele customer, that'll still happen. Like that is the actual customer going into the Miele Experience Center and having these 3 roles. Yeah, that still won't change. And even if she cannot do it, then there will be a new customer that'll have the same setup. So you'll have to think about those customers and think from a customer perspective, like, okay, how are they going to interact with me? And think about all those real world complexities, because you can design it in your ivory tower and think about how it all should work in the happy flow. And I'm very curious if you have any stories around that, about great designs meeting the real world practice. Like, isn't it, I think, Muhammad Ali who said, like, you always have a plan until you get punched in the face. Do you have any wartime stories around designs hitting the real life world?
Yeah. So I fully agree on your assessment. It starts with the people, and you really make sure that you have the processes with the right roles and responsibilities, and then you get tools to support that. So fully agree on that. So always agree who will do the vacuum cleaning, then see how the vacuum cleaning should take place, and then see what tool is best suitable for that. More stories. Of course, there are a lot, because if you try to make things more strict, there's always a work. Either the system will allow it, people will bypass the system, people try to rush the system, etc. So remember a story, we created a Adobe interactive form to do master data request. So it had links, so it was interactive, so it had links with SAP, so you could only use SAP tables, you could only use SAP plans, people, etc. So it really guided the user in doing it. And then there was, of course, a service level agreement around it that for requests, if they were complete and correct, they were reprocessed within X number of working days. Then there was a country which goes, but can we mark the form that it's urgent? I said, well, what do you mean? Sometimes we have a master data request which is urgent because we really want to capture the customer order, or we really need to rush a purchase order with a new supplier. So can we have a tick? I said, okay. And then we need to make in the workflow sure that it comes on top. Okay. So valid request. So we did that. A month later, they go, that really works well. Can you tick it for us by default? And I go, what do you mean by default? Because then our requests are always urgent, etc. I said, well, should you then not look at your process? Because a customer doesn't just come out of the blue, right? Because it's in a B2B setting, so you will probably already have contact with the customer. You have a lead. You may do some samples and those type of things. So a customer could never come up just like that on a regular basis. It might happen once or twice, and then we cater for you with that tick box. Same goes with a supplier, right? You have a procurement process. You need to see quotation. You need to see, is it all fit? Request for information, request for proposal, request for quotation. You are already in a process with them. Why not then start already earlier by doing the paperwork? And same goes for materials. So I pushed back on that, and they said, no, we really want to have a tick by default. I said, but that undermines the process, because if we do that then for everyone, do we then have an ultra urgent one or a super urgent one? Or how are we then going to classify it? Because you're diluting the list of priorities. Other stories as well is that even if you use the same system, the same version, and you got it globally rolled out, people think that all the data that's in there is all common, is all harmonized, is all the same. But if you don't pay attention to the actual discipline of people doing what you expect them to do, you have people who are bypassing the process, so they're not filling it in. So they have it, but they don't fill anything in. You don't have any data. Others might have a slightly different use for it, and they found a way to still use the same fields, but they put other things in it so that it triggers different behavior. So even if you have everything in one system, are you comparing apples with apples? Or are you just looking at a complete bowl of fruit? Or are you even looking at apples and eggs, etc.?
Yeah.
And
Don't
that's
even
fundamental
mention.
understanding that people go, no, we have the same system. We're sitting on a heap of data that is very, very valuable. Dennis, you just wave your magic wand and make the magic happen in terms of data management, in terms of analytics, or in terms of data or AI. And then I go, but it doesn't work like that. And they go, yeah, we sit on heaps and heaps of data and it goes back 30, 35 years. And then you look at it, it's not been structured. 35 years ago, they didn't have a common language. So Italy did it in Italian, France did it in French, Germany did it in German, the UK did it in English. In the Netherlands, they did both. They had Dutch and they had English because they were already transitioning. Then you can't even compare it on a language basis. And then if you didn't set the standards, etc. So that's why you now see the concept in a lot of companies called data literacy. Where we explain it to our business. Data literacy means that we will explain to you what is the role of data on your particular role, but also what is the influence of your particular role on data. Because if people go, yeah, we do a lot of knowledge transfers via Teams, it would be great if we can really store that, etc. And then I go, did you record the meeting? No. So there's no record and transcribe. How do you then think we can reverse engineer? Because you had a meeting, which you might do like this, as we're doing. But if you don't record and transcribe it, you're not capturing the data. So please start record and transcribe. And then we can mine all those transcripts and then turn that into valuable internal knowledge. Because whatever somebody wants to get out, somebody needs to put in, which lead to the second universal truth: crap in is crap out. So we really explain to people, this is the data you have at your disposal in your role, in terms of analytics or in terms of data, or there might even be a data owner or a data steward, but also the other way around. What does their role or their particular function have as influence on data, so that they understand better that if I just take an average lead time, that down the line in supply chain, we have disruptions with our customer if that average lead time for them is not applicable because they are in a more remote area. So it's always a day longer. Make the lead time really stick, because all your processes try to take into account all the different lead times to do your available to promise or to reverse calculate when you can do your production. If
But
you don't take that into account, then yeah.
you're mentioning many relevant things, Dennis. The data literacy part is very important, right? To not only understand sort of your existing data as an employee or as someone that interacts with the data, but also understand how you influence that data. And then I think especially sort of where the two principles meet each other, where your data literacy meets the sort of crap in, crap out. I mean, that sounds easy. And yes, sometimes people will make shortcuts and say, let's just make everything ultra urgent, or let's just fill in the minimal things, or let's just fill in blah, 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 because I don't have time to do this because there's an urgent customer or I have too much work anyway. Then you're deliberately sort of making the data less high quality than it should be. But there's also this sort of doing it all the right ways, but without the data literacy means you're creating shit data down the road, like you said, with the average lead time. But also when you're in Spain doing it this way, but then in the Netherlands you're doing it this way, and in Italy you're interpreting it the other way, then you still get crap data, even though all the intentions were good and maybe the data literacy was on this level, but they should have been on this level to also understand how it impacts the other business units or the international business versus just the local business and what the local needs are. So I just wanted to highlight that it is even unconsciously you can create shit data. So you have to keep cleaning the house.
True. And I truly believe that there won't be that many people which really have malintent. So they do the best at their abilities. You also have fields. This always needs to be one. No one challenges anymore why you fill in one there. So one, why is it mandatory field? Second, why is it then filled in by default? And three, why does no one understand why it needs to be one? What if you put in a two? Will something break or things like that? And that's where literacy really comes in, because again, the people and then the process is really the literacy program itself, by really plotting out where they are using data, where they're generating data, and how that then later down the chain comes to fruition. And then you can also then apply tools to really help them guiding in increasing the quality. Yeah? So in the past, you already started with mask so that the input could only be like this. You started with flagging things as mandatory fields so that people had to fill it in. Otherwise, it would not continue. Then you get literally SAP said no as a comment because mandatory field was not filled in. And of course, that there are a lot of tools where you can also do data quality assurance by really looking at either pattern recognition or you really have external databases where you can literally buy the data so that you can really validate it against the input. And you also see more customer self-service, you see supplier self-service. But also there, then your customers also need to have a kind of a data literacy that they know what the impact is if they don't maintain their data. Because one, they should know best where they are and where they want to have it delivered. But did they really take into account that they already have 3 ship tos and there was a fourth one and they didn't add that one yet, and therefore the delivery could not take place to where they wanted it to be? Is it then completely their responsibility, or as a supplier, you still should facilitate and help your customer in guiding them through the process to really make sure you get the best of both worlds?
I mean, yes, right. There's a shared responsibility, and the tools and the process should serve the user, right? So it starts with the people, of course, but then there's only so much you can fix with people. At some point, you have to redesign the process, as you said. Like, hey, if you always need to use urgent, then there's something wrong with the process. There's nothing wrong with the tool, or there's nothing wrong with the people, maybe, but then the process might be wrong. I also just wanted to highlight, you also mentioned the role of data stewards or data governance, and where you said like exactly this example that you gave where you had to say no, right? Because, and the importance of empowering the data professional, because if you had someone there that was too junior or didn't have the right, I would say, air coverage from management to say no to the very important sales department in this specific region, getting all the big customers, so you always say yes to them, then you automatically get the shitty quality data. But you need to empower your data stewards, because otherwise you end up cleaning your house twice a week instead of just once a month, basically.
And they always need to find the balance, because as I said, I don't expect anyone to really come in with bad intent to create bad data, nor do I think that they have bad intent to just undermine any process. And it needs to be a give and take. So really create mutual understanding, because you asked for books. I always like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen R. Covey. He clearly explains that one of the 7 habits is you first need to understand before you can be understood. So listen first where the other one comes from. So listen to their process. And then I always like to use quotes from inspirational people in history. And one of them I always liked is from Einstein. Make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. So really start with the process in mind. See where you can already improve the process by doing continuous improvement, by reducing waste, trying to automate steps. What we also saw in one of the biggest delays was always approvals in the master data process. But if you then do an analysis and you see that most approvers do it at 4:45 on a Friday and they got a 100 approval rate, then
Hey.
I went to them and I said, you're still going to be accountable for the quality of the data, but we're removing you as an approval step. And then they start complaining, yeah, but I'm accountable, so I need to see them. I said, but you have an approval rate of 100, and you always do it on a Friday, so we always have a delay in the process. So the approval rate of 100% can mean one of two things. One, the person who did the request did it so well, you can only approve, so then you don't need to. Or you do it as a kind of a rush job because you have to, and you're not really paying attention, so you don't take out anything that might have not been approved. So we remove you from the equation. The process is much more streamlined. You're still going to be accountable, but then we do cycles on top of it to still make sure that the data quality is of that level where you need it. Because that's also important. Does data quality always need to be 100%? Because it's becoming exponentially more effort and money if you really want to get to 100%. Is 90 okay? 5 okay? Some fields might need to have a 100 because your fiscal and legal requirements depend on it, or your delivery depend on it. So let's please have the right address to deliver to. Other things, do they need to be 100 or can it be a little bit less? That is every time within the process. You can only make that decision.
But how do you deal with those sort of conversations, maybe, or those processes where exactly, like, I think that the reflexive behavior by managers, people, processes, organizations maybe is add more checks, add more responsibility layers, add more accountability. I always hear from clients, okay, when we're redesigning the process, they don't think about this Einstein quote. They think about how can I add more people and distribute that responsibility. But the behavior that you're getting is exactly what you're describing, which is the approval rates are always 100%, or they tend to go near 100% because people just don't have time to go through the approval. I mean, in the meeting that you have with them, they say, I want to approve everything. It's nice. In practice, it's what you say. It's on Friday afternoon. It's 5 minutes before 5 o'clock. And just before they rush out to the weekend, they just quickly approve everything that is open. If the approval rate is 100%, something is going horribly wrong. If something is going wrong, or it's just...
But even if it's 90 or 95%, you can still decide to not make them an integral part of the system, so that you make it more in parallel process or things like that.
Yeah, but I was interested how you do those conversations. So how do you go and talk to that person doing the approvals and motivate them to say, let it go?
Yeah, well, you eat your own dog food. So you make data-driven decisions. So you really do the analysis and really show them. So really do either, again, the storytelling or the building platform, depending on what the data is telling you. Have I always been successful in it? No, because bureaucracy and people who really want to clamp on is human nature. So what I also then try to do is, this is after the effect. And so if you want to become data-driven, then you see in a lot of times that people with my function, etc., get invited at the end of the party where they go, hey, we have our people, we have our processes, we now have our tools. They generate all kinds of data. Now you make some sense out of it. So make some nice dashboards or do some robotic process automation or apply machine learning and AI. You get invited at the end of the party. And then you figure all these types of things out, right? That the process might not be completely optimal because they put too many checks and balances in it. You see that the data they're generating do not feed all the data you actually need for the use case they want afterwards. So if you really want to profile your customers, but you didn't include metadata on your customer level, then how can you then profile them? Because then you need more data. So I always say the best approach is to not be data-driven, but to be data-centric. And data-centric means you don't invite me or people from my team at the end of the party, but you invite us at the beginning of the party. Give us a seat at the table. Let us hear what you aim to do and how your process is going to be, what the people are going to be, the data you generate. And let us then help you really defining the data model in such a way that we can tell you, hey, you want this to come out, so therefore this is what you need to put in. I have mixed success rates in that one, because if you build up that positive PR and you really show that you're really thinking with them, so you think in possibilities and not in impossibilities, because some people think that what you explained by needing all those checks and balances is actually the role of data governance, by saying no against everything and put barriers everywhere and guardrails everywhere. Of course, there need to be guardrails where you need to stay in between because you want to stay compliant. But those people also have then, if you find the right one, the mindset on how can we enable things they want by still being in a safe and secure environment, and how can we then make sure that we're not just hampering the process by just putting all kinds of checks and balances on top of. Again, mixed results. So in 25 years, when I've been in all these type of conversations, I really had very high success and really big impact and also productivity gains. And I also had from, okay, but I told it to you, I explained it to you, I did my best. You still want to stick to this, let's do that. And then I can say, after being a professional now for 20, 25 years, I perfected my I told you so then.
I mean, I mean, that's real life, right? That's how it goes. I think if your success rate would be 100%, then we wouldn't have this conversation, or then we wouldn't have a job anymore because every process would be perfectly aligned. Or people would maybe have thought about removing themselves from the equation instead of just sticking to their current processes. You already mentioned sort of the new technologies entering the space, and especially like looking back 25 years. Don't want to make you feel old, but where you say that the new tools help you make this whole process more efficient, but also there's more data. How do you see that currently, and especially with AI? Your current role also involves the deployment of artificial intelligence. Like, how do you see that in practice, right? Because we see all the great demos, and there's a great demo by OpenAI a month ago, and then this week, I think Google had a great presentation. How does that translate to the day-to-day in a big organization?
Yeah. So it really is exciting times, because when I started my career 25 years ago, then software was power and power was money. So hey, you had the monoliths and you had all those type of things. Every time you wanted something, you had to buy yet another expensive tool. Now, 25 years later, so what really happened in the last 10 years, not only the computer power with cloud, etc., really took off, but what really also happened is you have much more community development. And there's now much more open source. There are already people who invented the wheel so that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So there's a lot already at your disposal, so that makes it much easier. So as a data scientist, all the fundamentals still date back to the 1950s of last year with people like Turing who really developed what is now the modern data science. When I studied data science in 1995 to 2000, then it was still Windows 3.11, where you had the blue screen of death, where you didn't have much processing power.
Where
So
are the
really doing
browsers
data
of
modeling.
death? Right, they're all gone. I don't know where they ended up. You still get them sometimes, but it's not like every day
Yeah,
or every.
yeah. Unless you take into account the CrowdStrike issue of last year, then all of a sudden everyone knew the blue screen
Yeah,
of
that's
death again.
okay. No, sure, sure.
But so you didn't have the computer power, etc. So now, 25 years later, the computer power is there. You can easily scale up with the hyperscalers, etc. But what even helped the discipline more is things like Hugging Face and GitLab and GitHub. And so there's a lot of open source out there. And that's where also OpenAI really helped by providing it to everyone, but with quite a low barrier. It also comes with its drawback because I am being seen internally by some people as being Harry Potter. So I just wave my magic wand 3 times and AI will solve all of it, right? So all the how do you call them? Unproductive processes, the broken processes. And I said, the only thing AI can do, like robotic process automation, etc., is it gets you quicker to the next breaking point. So if you don't really address your fundamentals of the process, etc., and of course the tools for that as well, to analyze the processes, to see how to stick them together in an end-to-end process. So those tools really help, but you first need to think about the people, the processes, the roles and responsibilities, really have that clear in your mind what you want to do. And also for companies, it's a decision. Where is just best practice fine because it's not a competitive advantage? I just need to do it right. And where do I really have a competitive advantage? And there I should be different from my competitors to keep that competitive edge. And you got Gen AI and all kinds of generic tools like the chatbots and the large language models to do document compare, etc. Everyone has that at their disposal. And then you have the AI applications, which can really make you as a company unique or still in front of your competition. And that's a continuous investment that needs to be done. But during my career, 80% of the time, I still spent on data, because data is the food for AI. So then you can use the analogy, why would you then feed AI junk food? Because then it will just get lazy and fat and etc. So you really need to give it the right food to really be active and really productive, etc. And that's very difficult because in a lot of companies, you see two type of groups. One group I call the greed group. So they think I'm Harry Potter. I wave my magic wand 3 times and everything happens. We don't need any investments. We don't need any people. We don't need any process improvement, etc. Just let AI fix it because it can plan my whole holiday if I just ask ChatGPT. So why can't it then just run my whole business by just asking ChatGPT or Grok or DeepSeek or whatever you want to use? And then there's kind of the fear group. And the fear group consists of, again, two different type of people. You have the people who then really fear from, okay, it's coming after my job. So if I participate in it, I'm kind of digging my own hole. So why would I? And the other ones are more like, no. We already exist for more than 100 years. We've been doing it like this for more than 100 years. We'll do it for another 100,000 years, 100 years. That is what we do, and that's what we do good. So they kind of missed that it's now 2025. We are in a digital age. Everything is around us. So I always tell those people, we're not competing with AI. We're competing with others using AI. So if we do it like this, and then we might be like the videotape stores you had at every corner of the street in the Netherlands, for example, because the two biggest one missed the whole streaming thing. They're gone. In the Netherlands, video is still there, but the other two were much bigger, are gone. Why? Because they didn't adapt to the modern society. At my current company, we have then, in that case, the challenge that people think, hey, it's going to cost me my job because between now and 10 years, substantial part will retire. They have a lot of knowledge. And we do need to digitize that because with the new workforce coming in, they wire differently, they learn differently, they want to operate differently, but also we won't get them in the same quantity. So as an organization, we do have a challenge. So with us, the fear group of it's coming after my job is a bit less, but the group which thinks from, yeah, but we've been doing it like this for so many years and it always worked well and we're still the biggest and the best, so we will stay that. Those I really need to manage up. The greed group I need to kind of manage down to really get to that equilibrium. What AI and machine learning can offer now, but also what it cannot offer now. Because some people think that we're already at the top of the hype, but not only in the hype of expectations, but also already in the hype of capability. And we're not there yet. Some people say, yeah, it will be the new industrial revolution. If you turn back time 100 years ago when the industrial revolution took place, there were two really big effects that you could really measure. One was really the productivity per capita really went up, but also unemployment really went up. Because Mr. Ford, when he introduced the conveyor belts, he had a much more consistent, qualitative, higher output with less people. So people ended up on the street. And eventually we went more into service economy, knowledge economy, etc. So we reschooled and put our schooling system more and more towards the service economy. So we picked it up. But that was not easy 100 years ago. If now Gen AI is already that next revolution, one, we still don't see productivity per head going up consistently, nor do we really see unemployment going up consistently. Will it happen? Yes, I'm a true believer that this technology really help us, and that's where I really like my sci-fi and not books, but mainly series and movies. In Star Trek, for example, they have already what nowadays is called the universal income. So everyone has as a base standard of living with free healthcare, free education, free housing. The replicators will give you the food, etc. And then people still work because they really want to have an impact or contribution to society. Yeah. Then the strange thing is, why does the captain on the ship then have quarters, which is about half a deck, while cadets on the lower deck still sleep in bed bunks? But okay, so there is still a bit of a hierarchy, but not from an economic point of view. And you will see that as well, because 100 years ago, most of us worked 6 days a week. And now we work 5 days a week. There are more and more pressures now or stimulus to go to 4-day work weeks. Because if our productivity really increases and we still as a society want to maintain a good standard of living for everyone, you do need to come up with those kind of concepts. But at the moment, if you can do AI and you do it really, really well and you boost productivity with 20%, you're just 20% more cost effective than anyone else. So that societal impact also still needs. So it's going to be really, really interesting times in the next 5, 10, 15 years because a lot will happen. So it really is great to be in this space, but my storytelling and my burning platforms only become more needed than less needed because you do need to keep on informing people along the journey and getting along that journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, that's for sure. And there's different levels of impact, like you say, like on a personal level, and how you do your daily things really depends on how you interact with AI and what you do with AI. I think what you said about data literacy is also true for AI, where there's sort of AI literacy. What can you actually do with AI? What can you not do with AI? And you need to not just think about your own work, but also about the process around it, above it, the whole process, like take that whole overview, because you can sort of fix your own bottleneck, but then it'll just move to the next bottleneck. You have to have that whole process overview. That's sort of and then on the organizational level, it's about how to become 20% more efficient than the competition. That's what matters. Then we can exist for another 100 years. How do we tactically, strategically deploy AI? Because you can sort of sprinkle AI on everything you do, but that doesn't make sense. Just like it didn't make sense to, I don't know, sprinkle digital transformation just across the organization. No, you need to choose your strategic directions and focus and push. It isn't easy to deploy AI. It's not like you just activate Copilot and suddenly the world is a bit brighter or more efficient. And then the societal level where, yes, we will have people that need to be retooled or retrained. And that's also what you said, I think, on the beginning of the conversation, is we have so much more tools at our disposal, but also so much more data. So I think just the amount of data and the complexity of, I don't know, just taking a product as an example, like instead of just a short description and maybe an image, I think the expectation will be that you will have 15 attributes according to a certain standard in 7 languages, and not just 40-character description where you put everything in that 40-character description. So just the amount of work will grow with the complexity. So the amount of work will grow with the efficiency provided by the tools. And the analogy I heard last week in one of the podcasts that I listened to was the rise of spreadsheets. Like, you had accountants doing manual accounting, like paper, pen and paper, maybe calculator based accounting. But the level of accounting was just the most important things. The most urgent things were being tracked, like the financial accounting bit on maybe the highest level. But now, because of spreadsheets and because of all the accounting tools, you can go much more deeper, much more detailed. You can account for much more things, like, for example, CO2 impact, carbon dioxide impact. All these things are now possible because of the tools. I think sort of the data point there was that there were no less accountants than there are now. They did not go out of business. They just track more and account for more. I'm not so sure if that is true for every profession, like, for example, copywriters. I don't know. The same maybe for, well, there's going to be groups of white collar workers that are going to be unemployed, I think. They need to be retrained, right? And then you get to the universal basic income type of retraining, replatforming, investing as a society in how to deal with this change. Like, how are you going to deal with this change? Because we will have people that will be out of a job in 5 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 1 year, because of the changes of AI. That doesn't mean that as a copywriter, you should be scared of AI. I think you should just start working with AI. And then, like you said, you moved from econometrics to SAP to data and SAP, and now it's data and AI and SAP. So yeah, you haven't been doing the same for the last 25 years either. So isn't it just natural to keep progressing? You keep learning new skills and keep being
Yeah, and
curious.
but there is a certain limit where people can keep up. People have a certain talent for things, and that's what you really should nurture, because that's what they like, that's what they're good at, and that's where they have the highest added value. And we, for example, also had some internal conversations about the copywriters and marketing in general. But the great thing about those people is they are the best prompter, because they understand what they want to get out. They can formulate how to get to something. So the best prompts I saw from copywriters and marketing, will all of them have a place? It's difficult to forecast, because jobs will change. Because already since the last 10, 15 years, everyone who started studying at MIT, 80% of them ended up in a job which did not even exist by the time they got started with studying at MIT. So within 4 years, jobs were created which did not even existed. So of course, and eventually there will be different type of jobs, etc., and we can do retraining and reskilling. But there will be a societal impact, and I do hope that there are enough people taking that into account as well. Because I always say whatever gets designed for the good can also be used for the bad. So you also have bad actors. It's difficult. And then also what you said, that there's now also a whole ecosystem out there with a lot of companies, startups, scale-ups, which all have the next brilliant idea. I get contacted by them on multiple times a day from, try this tool, and have you seen this tool? And, do you have this challenge? Our tool will solve it. A lot of them, sorry to say, seem to be spending more time on marketing than on the product. A lot of them, or at least a substantial part of them, are just checking a different jacket. So then why not develop it yourself? Because the core technology is already at your disposal, and they just gave it a different UI or a different look and feel, or just with a standard connected to a particular application, and therefore worked really well for that application. It's very, very difficult, because every software tool we have are now starting to offer AI at a token subscription type of thing. You have the more generic ones, you have the more specialistic ones, you have this, you have that. For me, it becomes more and more difficult to kind of see the forest through the trees, because there's now so many, and which ones are really adding value. So I do have an experimental mindset, and fortunately, the people in my team, some of them have really been selected on having that as well, that we want to stay up with the latest technology, that we just try things out, and if we fail, we just be open and honest about it, and then move on and try something else. But it's not easy, because I'm not the only one that gets contacted by this part. The board of my company also gets contacted, and then they have a beautiful presentation, and they just send the presentation to me. This is what we need. And that's not that much different from 10, 15 years ago, where the company I work at just looked at the top right quadrant of Gartner and said, that's the tool we need. It solves all our problems. And then you go, but what problems do we have? Look at the tool. It solves all our problems. Yeah, but can you define the problems you're perceiving? It's very difficult. And now with AI, it's even more difficult because I am a Harry Potter fan, but not in my work. So please don't expect me to have a magic wand. It's just a lot of hard work we put in to kind of make it look like magic, but don't believe all the magic that's been sold to you, including by me.
But then it's okay. Then it's okay. Dennis, we are coming up on time, so I think we have much more to talk about. So let's not make this our last conversation. Let's pencil in something new. You're always welcome. I mentioned at the beginning that I wanted some sci-fi recommendations. You mentioned Star Trek. If there would be 2 or 3 recommendations you would give the audience, what series or books or films, movies they should watch or read or listen to?
The most recent books I read because a series came out is Foundation, so I can really recommend that one. There are Star Wars fans, there are Star Trek fans. In that category, I'm more of a Trekkie because I like their storyline better. Even though some people who see my presentations do know that I love Star Wars as well because it's a great theme to do presentations. Getting that black screen with the stars, with the yellow letters coming up. I use it in presentations to just kind of kick it off in a more interactive
in a company
way.
far away.
Yeah, and currently there are a lot of games who have been turned into series. So you got the Last of Us. You had Halo. Unfortunately, they stopped it. Wheel of Time, even though there was not a game over books, got cancelled this week for the next season. So really disappointed about that. If you're more into the concept of data and AI, then there's Person of Interest, which is very, very interesting. It's already a bit of an older series, but I really liked it because it really shows what supercomputers and how do you call it, surveillance can actually result into. And then you had the other one, what was it, iRobot?
Mr. Robot. Oh.
Mr. Robot, yeah, I love that one as well because one, it has a bit of a personal story and a backstory, but also in terms of what's happening around you. So yeah, I really like those. Unfortunately, nowadays, if you finally see a nice series, then they get canceled after the first or the second season. So I'm really, really disappointed about that. So we now decided we wait until there are at least 2 seasons out and there's indication that it will be renewed before we start watching the first season because it was just too much of a disappointment. And also honestly, if you look back into the sci-fi movies and series from the last century, I still think that they're much better in terms of storyline, etc. Of course, now the effects are much better and now they can really do things they couldn't do 30, 40 years ago. But really the storyline, the character development, etc. I really like. So really in surveillance and Big Brother's watching you, Person of Interest is really great. It also is combined with quite some action. So people who like action, it also is there. Mr. Robot I found really, really to the point. And nowadays you also got a lot of podcasts which I listen to. So I'm really a big fan of Noah Yuval Harari. He wrote the book Nexus. So that really is talking about information and information age. And he's also telling the truth is the most expensive form of information, while fiction is the most cheap one. And that's why you now see a bit of the lying, the gaslighting, etc., or alternative facts, or however you want to call it, because much easier to make something up than to really do your research and do that. So
really do your research, not just on Facebook. Yeah.
So I really like him, and it's scary as well, right? Because there is a lot happening, and as I said, everything that can be built for the good can also be used for the bad, and yeah, it's challenging times, and current political climate, macroeconomic circumstances, etc. Yeah, it makes it an interesting time to live in, but also sometimes a scary time.
Stay curious, as they say. No, I think Dennis, it's great that you sort of, I mean, the same things that were true 30 years ago when it comes to movies, like you need to have great actors, great character development, a great plot, and then sort of the visual effects and the toolings used to do those visual effects. That's later. That's also important, but it's secondary. The same is true for, as we discussed, the data processes as well. Like it's about the people and the processes, and then the tools that you use to get to the result is secondary. Also important, but secondary. Dennis, I really want to thank you for joining me today. Really insightful conversation, some personal backstory. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope to see you soon on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really enjoyed it as well. So I would love to come back.
Thanks. Cool.
Okay, thank you, Stephan.